Imagine being a full-time college student and having a full-time job. And at this job, you are very hardworking and very dedicated, but you make no money. And you watch all the higher ups make hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is what happens to college athletes as they play for the schools via the NCAA. I was interested in this topic because one of my favorite sports to watch is football, and I recently been hearing a lot of podcasters and sport commentators have discussions on if NCAA athletes should be paid, and I didn't know that this was going on, and I didn't think that it was fair that all of the higher ups make so much money while the players make nothing. So first, I will talk about how NCAA players are getting ripped off. Second, I will talk about the level of dedication and the level of education that they are receiving. And third, I will talk about how the NCAA player contracts have no benefits to their players. So college athletes are being ripped off by schools because how they make and spend their money. The way they make their money is by partnering up with major like sports and TV networks like ESPN and Fox Sports by charging them copyright fees, and in return getting paid millions of dollars by broadcasting the games. And in an article by Sylvia Warlord titled "How Much Money Does the NCAA Make a Year?" It states that the NCAA made a huge milestone in 2017, earning 1.6 billion in revenue for the first time in its existence, with most of the money coming from college basketball tournaments. Another way that that college athletes are being ripped off is by schools claiming that they make no money, but they spend like almost all revenue on equipment and useless extra stadiums to sell more merchandise and to sell tickets. And another way that they're getting ripped off is by giving raises to coaches at these schools. In an article, the NCAA football coach salaries in real time by edsmart.org, it states that it pays extremely well to be a college football coach. Some salaries are mind-boggling, as Mike Saban and Jim Harbaugh make over $7 million a year, and Coach Mike Kozerski makes a whopping 9.7 per season. These sums of money are eye-opening because coaches make so much and players make nothing. This to me 100% proves that players are being ripped off because the money could be distributed among everybody equally. So now that I have talked about how students are being ripped off, I will now talk about the level of education they're receiving and the level of dedication that they go through when playing sports. So many professional NFL athletes have come out and said that the schools only use them as players. In one interview by Richard Sherman, a player from the Seattle Seahawks, said, "You wake up early at this time and have weights. After that, you have class and maybe a bite to eat. Next, you have meetings and practice, and finally, you're expected to finish all the work that you finish. I mean, you're expected to complete all your work that you've accumulated throughout the day." This to me shows that that these NFL players are overworked because it practices half the day, and then it's really tough for them to keep up with the competition, and they have to keep up with school, and we all know how difficult school can be at times. And then there are some bad practices going on in schools because again a lot of players have said that schools only want them as players. So when I was doing research, I found an investigation in 2015, an investigation with the University of Carolina. In a documentary, they revealed that they would put students in paper classes. So they stated that so we could have a player with a 1.4 GPA but in the summer be placed in three paper classes, and all of a sudden you have a player that is ready to play in the winter with a 3.0 GPA. And when I was investigating this, when I was doing my research, how you call it, I found out that these so-called paper classes were often nonsense classes, like the studies of the language Swahili, that players have like really no interest in, and often completely forget about it once they're done with the course. So now that I've talked about how the level of education is poor within college students, I will now talk about how the NCAA contracts are not worth it to sign for these players. So it's bad enough that they're not getting paid, but bad enough that they're not getting paid. But even before these college athletes can participate in playing sports, they have to sign NCAA contracts that basically prohibit them from having any form of compensation or sponsorships. There was one incident where a player sold his own jersey for $10, but the school sold them for $60. But they banned him because he was trying to make money like off the school. But when he signed that contract, he signed those rights away. And then I have another incident. In one incident, the NCAA banned 13 players, and then article by Dan Sternberg stated that 13 North Carolina football players were banned over selling team Nike shoes, and this to me proves that these contracts are harmful to the players, because they can't make any money, but the schools sure can. And then it gets worse. There's a player who got banned by accepting a loan that he must pay back, but because it was viewed by the NCAA as money from another organization that was only given to one player and not everybody, he was suspended. In an interview, he said with Perry Jones, the player who got suspended, said, "I basically got suspended because we were struggling and my mom didn't want us to sleep on the streets." And now to conclude, these were the reasons why I think the NCAA is running bad practices. First, I talked about how the NCAA were ripping off their own students. Second, I talked about how it's hard to balance school and playing sports. And then finally, I talked about how the NCAA brings no benefit to the players. And now I hope that I have brought more awareness to this issue, and I hope that I persuade you. I have persuaded you that the NCAA should pay their student athletes. Thank you.